Empower Black men to live extraordinary lives. Shatter the stereotypes. Power Black men. Power Black men. Shatter the stereotypes. Power Black men to live extraordinary lives. Shatter the stereotypes. Shatter the stereotypes. Power Black men to live extraordinary lives.
Welcome to Shatter the Stereotypes, where the intention is to empower Black men to live extraordinary lives. This show is based on the simple idea that every Black man is capable of creating inner peace, dynamic health, great relationships, and financial abundance. Therefore, we provide insights and strategies to educate, motivate, and inspire Black men to reach their full potential and create the life of their dreams. So if you're ready for some high-octane motivation and inspiration that supports and empowers you to live the life you were born to live, get ready to shatter the stereotypes so you can build a life that lights you up and positively impacts the world. So now, let's shatter the stereotypes with your host, Coach Michael Taylor.
Hello and welcome to Shatter the Stereotypes, where my intention is to empower Black men to live extraordinary lives. You see, there's never been a shortage of Black male role models. There's only been a lack of exposure of those role models in mainstream media. So my intention is to showcase and highlight Black men who are doing remarkable things in the world. And with that being said, I was recently on a video call with some friends of mine who I launched a movement called the Brotherhood of Kings with. And the intention of the movement is to engage Black men in a conversation about embracing authentic masculinity. And during the call, I interacted with this brother named Nasir, and I had an immediate connection with him. So after the meeting, I checked him out online and I said, man, I got to get this brother on my podcast. So I reached out to him on LinkedIn and he graciously agreed to join me. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Nasir Bayan. Hello, Nasir. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. How you doing, Coach Taylor?
Absolutely fantastic. So before we jump into your work and your story, let's start off with a few icebreakers. So first of all, tell us where you're from and tell us a little bit about teenage Nasir. What were you like as a teenager?
Oh, wow. Well, I'm originally from the Midwest, Columbus, Ohio.
Okay.
To be exact. So that's my hometown where I was born and raised. Oh, wow. As a teenager, I was introverted, shy, but still really, really loved people, inquisitive, smart/nerdy, and with a little bit of athletics thrown in there. So that was, yeah, that was the teenage me. Yeah.
There you go. Now, I'd like you to name just a couple of people who have shaped you to be the man that you are.
Oh, wow. Just in general?
Yeah, just a couple of people.
My parents, definitely my grandparents. So my family in general. And oh goodness. I'm sure there's a bevy of like historical figures, as well. I don't know why Malcolm X is coming up. Malcolm X, just different folks, but the first people that came up were family, like parents and grandparents.
Okay. Now, if you were trapped on an island for 30 days and you could only take one book with you, what book would you take?
Oh, oh. See, these those questions gonna make you pause. The first one that came to mind was a pivotal book for me when I first read it. Goodness, almost 20 years back. The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle.
Eckhart Tolle, love it.
So yeah,
love that book. Love that book. Now, you like movies?
Indeed, yes.
Share one of your favorite ones.
I'll share two. One of them, I realized that when I watched, I think one of your past episodes that you and I have in common, or actually when I read one of your listened to one of your audiobooks, Star Wars. I'll go one further and say Empire Strikes Back and The Matrix, or the first one. So those are actually two that immediately came up as two.
And if you look over my shoulder here, who do you see back there?
Brother, I already know. Yeah, yeah.
Here's a crazy story. 1977. I'm 17 years old. I go to the movies. Had no
Mhm.
idea what I wanted to watch. Me and a friend were just kind of hanging out late one night, trying to find something to do. We see this poster for Star Wars. Knew absolutely nothing about it.
Mhm.
Went in to see the movie. The summer of 77, I saw Star Wars in the theater 21 times.
Come on. Yeah. Yeah.
It just, there was something about that movie that really touched me. Now, some 15, 20 years later, I realized what the appeal was, what it was that drew me into Star Wars. And it was
Mhm.
based on an interview I saw with Bill Moyers and Joseph Campbell.
Yeah. Come on.
And he was talking about the hero's journey. And the whole Star Wars series was based on the hero's journey, or Joseph Campbell's philosophy. And I thought, oh, yeah, that's why I resonated so much with that
That's
movie.
it.
I really get it.
That's it. That's
So
it.
with that, now let's do a couple of sentence completions.
Okay.
Okay. I really love to
B.
be, now that's really powerful. That that's really powerful. I get that.
Uh-huh.
All right. My superpower is
Listening.
I am proud of
My family.
life is
Beautiful.
one thing I would like to change about the world is
More peace.
if I had a magic wand, I would
Ooh. Help people realize their indwelling power.
mm, and the future is
Exciting.
cool.
These some good questions.
So I wrote a book titled The Cure for Onlyness, a Black Man's Guide to Joy, Passion, and Purpose. And in the book, I talked about the unique challenges that we as Black men face while being in environments where we're the only person of color in the room. Now, I'm absolutely certain you've had that experience. So I'm curious, how do you navigate through those types of situations?
Ooh. Ooh. The thing that immediately comes to mind, because you're right, there absolutely are like different experiences that are kind of popping up. The thing that immediately comes to mind is like community and connection. I think it's probably one of the reasons that you and I connected so well via the Brotherhood of Kings, in the sense of like community allows for connection, even if you're not getting it in certain areas of your life, i.e., maybe the workplace or different things like that. So finding the community or communities where you can be heard, you can be felt, you can be seen, you can be lifted up, you can be challenged, in ways that are that don't negate your humanity, and you can up level. So that's what kind of, I guess, immediately comes to mind.
Yeah, that's the importance of having that positive support network. So critical.
Mm.
Now, as a man who happens to be Black, are you optimistic or pessimistic about the future in general?
Oh wow, definitely optimistic, 1,000%, definitely optimistic.
Gotcha. So now I'd like to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself to the Shatter the Stereotypes audience. So tell us what you do professionally and introduce yourself however you choose to.
Gotcha. Okay, I'll do the professional first. So the professional is I'm Nasir Bayan. I'm in the corporate mental health space, so I'm a corporate mental health expert. That's a fancy way of saying that I help companies to actually grow their ROI, to be able to attract and keep their employees, and to literally banish stress by creating a culture that's truly mentally healthy or mentally well. So professionally, that's kind of the intro. The behind the scenes on that is former corporate guy, corporate leader. I was in corporate for just about 20 years, really doing business development and then also doing corporate training, where you go in and, work with leaders or employees on different things. So I have that experience. And then I'm also a therapist, licensed psychotherapist. Sometimes I just like to say healer, because that's what therapy is really designed to do. And yeah, that's kind of the professional, the professional side of me. The personally, I'm a human being. I'm a brother that is enjoying and even being challenged by, but even enjoying the challenge of mastering this thing called life. And really grateful to be kind of connecting with other folks that have a similar, I guess, a similar vibe or trajectory. So that's my intro.
Gotcha. Now, after reviewing your websites, it's obviously obvious that you've done a lot of inner work and healing. And I've come to know that there are only two things that will cause a man to want to change. One is pain, and the other is what I call divine discontent, which is just a feeling, an internal feeling that something's just not right. So I'm curious, what was it that caused you to begin your inner journey? Was it pain or was it divine discontent?
It was both, but the primary driver was pain. The goodness, I was early 20s, just finishing up undergrad, college, just finishing up undergrad. Had a significant relationship breakup, like broke up with my first girlfriend, like, first serious relationship, heart shattered, just trying to figure stuff out, hurting, don't even know I'm hurting, don't know how to move to talk to, like just searching for answers, really. Like as you said, pain will wake you up and say, well, what can I do? Is where's the way out? And that was the beginning. I can kind of say this in hindsight, but it was the beginning of both a healing journey, like personally, as well as like a spiritual journey in terms of like some spiritual, transformation or awakening or different words that people use. So it was definitely pain as well as a little bit of divine discontent sprinkled in.
Yeah, it's interesting because my divorce was my wake-up call. And I like to think of it as that divine cosmic slap upside the head when the universe says you're not doing what you were put on the planet to do. Because as difficult and as painful as my divorce was, in retrospect, what I can now see is it was the absolute best thing that ever happened to me. Because it challenged me for the first time to stop looking outside of myself and to start going within.
Yeah.
Because I was the typical American guy, chasing the American dream, the house, the wife, the 2.5 kids, and all of that. I had all of that and was still miserable.
Come on.
Didn't even recognize I was miserable, but I had stuff. But it wasn't until I lost all the stuff that I decided or chose to wake up. And that's really how my journey began. It was an intense amount of pain, the loss of my family, my kids, my marriage, and all of that. But again, it was the wake-up call I needed to wake me up to who I really am as a human being.
Yeah.
And it's been an amazing journey ever since. So with that being said, different things, we do different things when we go through these transitional periods. So what were some of the things that you began doing when you had that experience of the breakup and starting that journey inside? What are some of the things that you do to help start healing?
Oh, goodness, we're talking about early 2000s. The probably the one thing is I would say maybe like a little bit of meditative introspection. I don't even know if I would call it meditation, but I realized that that's some of what it was. So kind of looking inward a little bit and wanting to make sense of the pain that I was feeling. Like I didn't want it to just be there. So trying to make sense of it. That was probably the first thing. I mean, it was 4 or 5 years forward from that before I actually like did therapy. Like, oh, you need to go get maybe some help, some assistance. And the I don't know if it's funny or interesting, kind of linked to that, is it happened when I was in graduate school to become a therapist. So
Mm.
I'm in my first year of school, and it's I think it was 12 of us, and we're in these classes, kind of just starting our coursework of would-be therapists. And I had a professor that basically said, long story short, hey, if you're going to be, a counselor or therapist or helping folks, it kind of makes sense to get your own counseling or therapy. And I heard it intellectually, like my mind heard it, like, oh, that makes intellectual sense, and on down, and then it went through. And then, fast forward, maybe in another class, I hear another professor say, well, if you're going to be a counselor therapist, you should, kind of make sense to get your own counseling and therapy. And again, my mind hears it, and it's like, oh, okay, great. And then it keeps on going. So who knows how many times it was? Maybe by the 50th or 100th time, I don't know which, but at a certain point, there was something inside of me was like, this is specifically for you. And I remember it was like a light bulb that came up, but also with that light bulb was this fear of like, well, it was almost like, well, what am I going to uncover if I start to excavate? And then there was this double kind of, I don't know, anxiety or stress around, okay, well, if I'm trained to be a counselor or therapist, I can't go to the university counseling clinic because I work at the university counseling clinic, or that's where my colleagues are. So how do I find someone that, like, it was all of this figuring out. And eventually I did. After I think the first person wasn't really a connection, and the second person was a sister, Black female psychologist, and she was amazing and kind of kicked off, for me, what some of that healing journey was. So long story long to say, it was me searching for some answers, but it took a while before I actually started tapping in and doing, I guess, even deeper inner work.
So when had you decided to become a therapist?
Oh wow, it was goodness, I want to say 04, 05. I was
Mhm.
doing some corporate training work. So I was like doing kind of some subcontracted training work, going to companies and do maybe, work around leadership or inclusion or team building, stuff like that. And I realized that I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed teaching, training. I enjoyed seeing a light bulb go on. I enjoyed hearing, leaders say, this is valuable. Like, I'm getting something out of this. So it was very intrinsically rewarding. So my brain said, well, you can go back to school and you can either do like human resources or organizational development and maybe do like a master's or graduate degree in that. Or you could do maybe a master's or graduate degree in like counseling or therapy. Both are around working with people and helping and serving people. And that, like, that's your jam. You know that you love that. So I knew that I wanted both. And the tipping point was I sat down or got still and I asked myself the question, well, Nasir, out of those two, which one would you do for free?
Ooh.
Not because you don't want to be adequately, accurately, or wildly compensated for what you do. It's not because of that, but because it's who you are that shows up in this profession. And that was where there was the tipping point between human resources, OD, and counseling and therapy. So that was the tipping point. So thus I kind of went down that road.
Wow. Great story.
Yeah.
Great story. Now, as men, there's a reluctance to go into therapy because of the stigma of appearing weak.
Mhm.
So, what would you say to the guy who's watching this right now and may be considering going to therapy?
Ooh, ooh, excellent question. As is par for the course. Um, the things that need to come up are, I get it, I understand it, it makes total sense. But slash and on the other side of therapy, um, is a lot of peace. It, in my experience, everyone's mileage may vary. It unburdens you. That's probably the best way I can put it, is like therapy unburdens you. So there's just less on, there's less you're caring, there's less you're thinking about, and it ends up just setting you up to be to feel good or feel better or feel good, let alone to like transform your life. But it would just start with, I get it, I understand it, it's real, I've been there. But on the other side is a lot of good stuff.
Yeah, I mean, as I reflect back, because God, 30 something years ago, when I was going through my divorce and trying to figure out, how to put my life back together.
Mhm.
And interestingly enough, see, my saving grace and curse at the same time is my need to understand things. So for
Mm.
me, when I went through my divorce, I was trying to figure everything out in my head. So
That's right.
I'm reading books on divorce. I'm reading all these books. I'm getting all this information.
Uh-huh.
But I hadn't really taken the time to connect with how I was feeling.
Yeah.
And then I received a miracle because I was sitting up late one night because I was too depressed to sleep.
Mhm.
And this commercial came on about depression. And as they were sharing some of the symptoms, I went, oh man,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
oh man,
Uh-huh. They were reading your mail.
oh man. It just all of a sudden it clicked. I'm like, I think I'm depressed.
Mhm.
Now, as men, it's not uncommon for us not to recognize when we're depressed.
Mhm.
And one of the reasons that is because we've been conditioned as men not to feel anyway. So we rationalize everything.
Yep. Come on.
But we have to be willing to acknowledge the feeling. And so for me, when I saw that commercial, I saw the symptoms, I realized that I was depressed. But here's the first thing I did. I went to the library, started reading books on depression.
Uh-huh. Come on.
Once again,
Come
I'm trying
on.
to figure it all out in my head.
Yeah.
So I had all this information, all this knowledge, but I was
Mhm.
still depressed.
Uh-huh.
And so something in me, which I now acknowledge as divine intelligence, God as I understand it, something in me said, Mike, you got to do something different. And so what happened was, as a result of seeing that commercial, I gained the courage to go to therapy. Now, the hardest part about going to therapy, the first hardest part, is choosing a therapist.
Yes. Yep.
Because in my little mind, again, I'm very analytical, very rational. So all sorts of things going through my mind. For example, should I have a male therapist
Mhm.
or should I have a female therapist?
Mhm.
Do I have to have a black therapist or can a white therapist? I mean, all these questions. There's just so many questions that I'm sure if you're watching this and you're thinking about it, know that this might come up. So hopefully this will give you some insights. So I'm sitting here thinking about trying to figure out, okay, so how do I choose the therapist? And I couldn't figure out how to do it. So I came up with a plan.
Mhm.
I got a phone book, which tells you how long ago that's been. We don't use phone books anymore. But anyway, I got a phone book.
Uh-huh.
Literally opened up the yellow pages. I just
Yeah.
I just turned the therapist. I covered my eyes. I just did like this, and my finger landed on the therapist, and I said, I'm gonna call him.
Uh-huh.
Now, that's a little unorthodox, but it's difficult choosing a therapist. So, from your perspective as a therapist, what insights can you provide in someone who may have that struggle right now trying to decide where to go?
Oh, I'm so glad that you're bringing this up, that we're talking about it. In my experience, this is huge for people that are just, thinking about therapy, ready to kind of dip their toe in the water. Before I go directly to like, what to look at in terms of choosing is I want to go back to when you were talking about, being depressed, feeling depressed and kind of not knowing it and trying to figure it out from the neck up. Like, oh, well, intellectually, if I can consume all the information, the I love that stuff. I say I nerd out on that stuff. Like I love that. But I call it the head, heart, hands approach. Some of the knowledge or wisdom is head wisdom. Some of the knowledge or wisdom is heart wisdom, meaning, what we feel or what we value. And then some of that knowledge or wisdom is hand wisdom, meaning what we actually do, our actions, our behavior. And when it comes to, I guess I'm saying to say, when it comes to therapy or finding a therapist, there's a head, heart, hands connection that oftentimes is the one that we make when we say, "Oh, I think I want to, work with that person." I've had that experience before of trying to choose someone and male therapist, female therapist, black or white therapist or different ethnicity. The in addition to doing a little bit of looking at what they may have online or their presence, which definitely makes sense, the other piece is if you're on a phone call with them, if y'all, do any sort of consult where you're vetting them, they're vetting you, everybody's checking each other's FICO score, to see, hey, we want to work together. Okay, everyone's doing that. In the process of that, in my experience, there is what I call it like an embodied knowing. There's something that you can't always logically or intellectually explain, but something in your body sometimes says, oh, I think this might be the person. I think I might want to lean in with them or tap in with them. And my encouragement is for people to listen to that and to honor that. Even as a therapist, I can't always say, well, this is exactly what it is and give an easy, logical, rational explanation. But I can say, in my experience, it's worked. It has not let me down, like in terms of me choosing a therapist or tapping in and doing my own work. And I've had clients of mine say, just, I saw your stuff and I don't know, I just really thought that, and I'm like, cool. Like I trust that in you, which sees something in me, and let's rock and get this healing jump off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
again, when I went to therapy, that was before the internet. You didn't have access to people's profiles and reviews and testimonials. And so it's just a matter, first and foremost, you have to make the commitment that you want to go,
Mm-hmm.
then begin the process. Like I said, you can go online, tap into their feeds and figure out, okay, when you click on these, I mean, there's so many resources now that
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have back 30 years ago.
Yeah.
But if you're thinking about it, all I want to say is the first thing you have to do is simply commit to going.
Yeah. Come on.
That's where it starts. So make the commitment to go. And then, as Nasir was just saying, you have to start trusting your inner voice, that still small voice within you that will guide and direct you
Mm-hmm.
if you'll learn to listen. So first and foremost, understand, recognize there is no shame in asking for help. As a matter of fact, I think the three most difficult words for any man to say, and especially Black men, the three most difficult words for us to say is, I need help.
How do I know
But
that's
we
what you
have
said?
to
Okay.
remove that stigma and recognize that there's no shame. It's not a sign of weakness to say, I need help.
Mm.
So seek support, find the help that you need. Because if you're listening to this and it's resonating with you, that's that part of you that knows it's time for you to make a change. It's time for you to do something different. So speaking of that, Nasir, a lot of men, when we start talking about feelings and inner work, a lot of men confuse intimacy with sex.
Mm.
So let's make a distinction here between intimacy and sex. How would you make that distinction?
The first thing that's coming up is sex is the very natural and physical act of sexual union, with another person. So sex is the almost want to say the external act. Intimacy has an internal component to it, and an internal act. Sometimes there's sex with intimacy, sometimes there's sex without intimacy. The what's coming up for me is shout out to I heard this from Iyanla Vanzant, so shout out to her. This isn't me. I'm repeating something I heard her say that sometimes she'll take a word and break it down to kind of really help people get something. And she said intimacy is really about into me see, in the ability for a person to see us. That means warts and all, the good stuff, the bad stuff, the stuff that we're proud about, the stuff that we're not so proud about it, but it's real. Like that ability to see into another person, like that's intimacy. And a person can have that, people can have that without sex. And you can have an intimate relationship with someone professionally, personally, family, community, where there's not sex, but there's an intimacy because you all see each other. So I don't know. Those are my thoughts. That's what kind of immediately comes up in terms of the difference between the two.
Yeah, and the reason that I bring that up is because as men, when we're disconnected from our emotions, when we're disconnected from our feelings, in a lot of cases, what we're doing is we're having sex without intimacy because we aren't connected to our true, authentic feeling. Now, I want to share this story that really kind of makes that point. So, after my divorce, I really struggled with relationships. My
Yeah.
relationships would last 2 to 3 weeks, and then women were leaving me, and they were all saying, I care too much about you to stay in this relationship, which made no sense to me whatsoever.
Mm,
But then they would say, the reason that I'm leaving is because you're emotionally unavailable. Now, that made absolutely no sense to me back then. I mean,
mhm,
what do you mean I'm emotionally unavailable? I'm a nice guy. And, we talk, we have fun, but I didn't know how to open my heart and share intimately
mhm,
with a woman. And so I
mm,
struggled with creating connection.
yeah.
And that's what we really long for is connection. But connection takes emotion, takes feeling. And so for me, struggling with relationships, and every time a woman left me, I actually built a higher wall
Come on.
around my heart without even knowing I was doing it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then I had this experience. So I'm dating this girl, and I liked her. Um, but we were together, and we were actually in the act of sex. And all of a sudden, I just felt this emptiness, this
Mm,
like
oof,
hole in my soul. And
oof.
in so many ways, I felt like I was using her just for sex, even though that wasn't my intention. But there was just a disconnection, and I didn't feel emotionally attached and connected to this person. And it just felt wrong.
Mm,
And so during the act of sex, I literally rolled over, and there was just this void, this numbness, I guess. I just couldn't feel. And I said, look, I am so, so very sorry, but this has absolutely nothing to do with you. I said, I just got some stuff going on that I need to figure out. And this isn't fair to you because I know, that you care for me, and it's just not working. I'm really sorry, but I can't do this anymore. So we ended up breaking up. But it was I really can't put it fully into words, but the best way I can describe it is during the act of sex, I just felt empty.
mhm.
I felt hollow, and I didn't want to feel like that.
Yeah.
And so I took a vow of celibacy. I said, until I figure this out, I don't want to sleep with nobody else.
Mm,
It's not fair to them, definitely not fair to me because it's just not fulfilling.
yeah.
So it takes a very courageous man to admit that I need help.
Yes.
I need to look at what it is that's driving this negative behavior. But what I can tell you is that as a result of doing my healing work, learning to connect with my emotions, being authentic and real with myself, I have now created a 20-year marriage to the woman of my dreams. I absolutely love and adore her.
Go ahead.
And there's an emotional intimacy and connection that we have that is just freaking amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But none of that would have been possible if I hadn't been willing to do my inner work.
Yes.
So, with that being said, I want you to talk a little bit about the impact that trauma, specifically childhood trauma, has on our ability to create intimacy.
Ooh. Ooh. Mm, mm. I want to pause one to thank you and to thank you and to honor you for sharing that. It was my first time hearing that story experience. So one, thank you. Two, it's real. The Without all the clinical wording and jargon. So this is Nasir's, perspective on it. Trauma is stuck energy. That's the fancy clinical word for something happened Something happened, whether it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20, 30, how many years ago, but something happened and it caused the energy to get stuck. So trauma healing is the process of, could be a therapy or inner work or different things, getting that energy unstuck. So then you can use it again, like you reclaim it in your body, your mind, everything can use it. So trauma just means something happened and the energy got stuck. So to your question of, well, how does trauma, and specifically, as you said, early childhood trauma, how does that impact us? It just means that when I was, young, as a child, a kid, young adult, something happened. And there's a lot, the people will fill in what that is, even when they hear it, but something happened. And when something happened, things got stuck. Sometimes it could be my emotions got stuck, or I lost contact with me. And if I lose contact with me, I can't connect with you because I'm stuck. There's a block there. It could be mentally stuck of like, I don't know, every time this happens, I just kind of hit a block or get, mind fall. Or it could be, stuck in terms of behavior. Like I'm just not able to execute, or do this thing here, even though I want to. So going back to what I was saying about the head, heart, and hands, if trauma means the energy got stuck, and this sometimes it means it got stuck and it shows up in head and how we think. Sometimes it gets stuck in heart in terms of how we feel, or sometimes it gets stuck in terms of the hands and what we do, or sometimes don't do or fail to do. So that's I don't know, kind of my immediate thoughts.
Yeah, and that's a great way to think about it. And I think specifically in the Black community, I think one of the things that keeps us from dealing with our inner world, our work inside, is primarily religion.
Mm.
Because for most of us, or for a lot of us as Black folk, whenever we had pain, whatever, we went to the church. And we were taught, or we were told, to just pray about it, or Jesus would fix it, or whatever. We rationalized dealing with pain.
Yeah.
But I think as a community, it is absolutely imperative that we start looking at the impact that trauma has on our children and ourselves specifically, and especially as Black men. Because a lot of times I'll hear people say, well, when I was a kid, I got beat, but I'm fine. I'm okay. But the truth is, there's a lot of pain that is trapped inside of us, and that's why we aren't really connected to our authentic selves, I guess is one way to put it. But
Mm-hmm.
whenever you look at things like addiction and senseless acts of violence, they're all driven, I believe, by repressed pain. And it's just a person's way of trying to deal with that pain. And until we deal with it and let it go, it's going to show up in crazy ways.
Mm-hmm.
So, as Black men specifically, it's important for us to be willing to talk about pain. It's important for us to talk about trauma. Because if you're struggling with relationships, if you're struggling with anxiety, if you're struggling with just fear and worry all the time, there's a good chance it's because there's some trapped energy in there that just needs to be released.
Facts. Yep.
And therapy is one way of releasing that energy. Now, there's all sorts of modalities that you can use. You can, therapy's one. I did some work with a guy named John Bradshaw. The most important work that I've done. And he had a 3-day workshop called Healing the Inner Child.
Mm.
And it was that work that I want to say saved me, or shall I say, allowed me to authentically connect with who I am. See, I used to be that motivational guy. You're familiar with Anthony Robbins, the motivational speaker, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I followed all these motivational speakers, and I did the Anthony Robbins walking on hot coals barefooted. I did left rounds. I did all these things, but I never really felt whole until I did John Bradshaw's work.
Ooh.
Because what happens is, motivation wasn't my problem. I was always motivated. The problem was I was motivated by shame.
Mm.
I was motivated by this deep internalized feeling of I'm not good enough. So I did all this motivational stuff to try to prove to myself and others that I was good enough.
That's it.
So it wasn't until I healed that shame that I could be free. The good news is, in healing that shame, the motivation that I had, now I can use that energy to do the things that I'm doing, which is part of my purpose,
Yes.
which is speaking and writing and all the things that I do. But those things wouldn't be possible if I had not done my inner work first, got to the core of what was driving my behavior, and healed that.
Mm.
So, as you're watching this, if you are struggling emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, you just feel like something's off, there's a very good chance that simply opening your mind and heart to a therapist or to a workshop or something that allows you to tap into whatever that trapped energy is. Because for me, I mentioned that I was driven by shame. Well, shame is a feeling. It's a negative feeling that I'm just not good enough. And it can be released. It can be healed. You can move past it, but you have to be willing to do that work. Now, I want to talk about something else. And so you wrote an article titled Bringing Balance to the Force.
Okay. Yeah.
And you asked the question, how do we honor the divine feminine in ourselves and others and in society? Now, I know there are a lot of men, if you say feminine, they immediately put up these walls, these defense mechanisms. I ain't got no feminine energy. So, from your perspective, what's the difference between masculine and feminine energy?
Oh wow. The one shout out the you can put something out and you're like, oh, I forgot that was out there. So one shout out to the research team. Number one, the thing that immediately comes to mind is traditionally the feminine principle. I'll say that the feminine principle could be open, expansive, yielding, nurturing, emotional, relationship-based, interdependent, all of these things. And traditionally, the masculine principle could be active, directive, independent, logical, driven by will, and about getting things done. All of us have those. Let me preface it. Personal thought, feeling, opinion, belief. So this is Nasir's personal thought, feeling, opinion, belief. No one has to adopt it, but since you asked it, I'm sharing. All of us have those principles in us. Now, we may have different components of them, or like, wow, I really realized that I lean here, but we're not devoid of the other. There's a visual that pops in my brain. The yin and yang symbol.
Oh yeah,
it looks like the two fish.
Yep.
And there's basically like a black fish and a white fish, so to speak. And then inside of the black fish, there's one little white dot. And then inside of the white fish, there's one little black dot, which is the way I look at it, I should say, is the acknowledgement that there's an aspect of the other, aspect or polarity inside of each other. So there's an aspect of the feminine inside of the masculine, and there's an aspect of masculine inside of the feminine. So yeah, that's what kind of immediately comes to mind. And yeah, that's my
And so again, as men, we kind of recoil when you hear the term feminine, because we live in a masculine culture that has conditioned us as men to think that masculinity is a certain way. We're supposed to behave a certain way. And I believe that old masculine paradigm is no longer sustainable, and we need to change our paradigm of what it means to be a man. But I want to share this. I want you to think about this, audience, about masculine and feminine energy. Here's a simple way to think about it. Femininity is the energy of beingness. Masculinity is the energy of doingness.
Come on.
So women have masculine energy. Men has feminine energy. It's just the energy that's inside of us, and we have access to both. So as a man, connecting to your feminine energy is simply connecting to the essence and the energy of your emotions and your feelings. Doesn't make you a woman, doesn't make you weak. It gives you access to a part of yourself that is integral in your well-being.
Mm.
So when you think about masculinity, the energy of doing, it's that energy which drives us, right? It's an energy of action.
Yeah.
Obviously, women have that. They have that action orientation also. So it's not gender specific. They're just two different energies. But being able to identify those two energies is where our greatest challenge is. Knowing when I'm in my feminine energy or I'm in my masculine energy. And that takes emotional awareness.
Yes.
That's all. It's just emotional awareness or mindfulness. And so that's what I try to do with this show, provide awareness and mindfulness to challenge you to think. And so I want you to think about those two terms, masculinity and feminine, and hopefully that kind of cleared it up so that you are comfortable either way, recognizing your masculine or feminine energy.
Mm.
Now, as we wind down, you wrote another article and you were talking about the importance of intentionally making room for Black joy. Now, I love that article because as Black men, we are so inundated with negativity and the negative narratives of the media. You notice that very seldom do you see Black men expressing joy. So I just want you to just kind of elaborate on that, making room for Black joy.
Oh, ooh. Yeah. Ever since the pandemic, there's been a lot that's happened over the last 2.5, almost 3 years. And in terms of, you talk about images and the images that we see, and the things we hear about, the narratives we hear, there are a lot of images. There's no shortage of images or narratives about Black pain, Black suffering, Black challenges, Black trauma. That's there. You don't have to look far to see that. Now, I always want to pause here. It doesn't mean that those things don't have some truth and don't have a place in the narrative. They absolutely do. But sometimes we can get stuck. Sometimes if we can get stuck there, not realize that the other side of that is Black joy, Black accomplishment, Black health, Black wealth, Black wholeness, all of those things. And for me, it was something that I realized I didn't see or hear about a lot, just in the general narrative. And I know that that's not true. Like in my world, like most of the Black folks, Black people I'm around, are happy and healthy and joyful. And there's a need for that. There's a need for us to hear it, to speak about it, to talk about it, to see it, for Black people generally, and then specifically for Black men, and to know that there is a place to be in my divine purpose, to be in my masculinity, and to be in my joy, and that those things can coexist, and that it helps me and it helps everyone around me. So that I almost forgot that I wrote that, but it's just about acknowledging that Black joy is huge. And I'll go back maybe a few minutes. One of the things we were talking about trauma is that sometimes what happens is that trauma, it's like having on a pair of glasses that color the way we see the world. Like, oh, I've got on glasses, but the spectacles and the glasses are broken. So when I look at the world, all I see is a broken or shattered world without realizing, oh, I might need to take these glasses off. It's impacting what I see or how I see things. So trauma sometimes can almost cut us off temporarily from being able to realize, like, yo, this joy thing is real and it's accessible. So Black joy, like, I'm all about it. I'm all about it.
Yeah,
brother.
and the hard part about it though, for me, because my friends gave me a nickname.
Uh-huh.
They call me Michael Happy Ass Taylor.
Yeah.
Because of my optimism. And I know, there's several times where I've had, debates with brothers, friends of mine, really good friends of mine, about, optimism and why I'm so optimistic. And it's like sometimes they assume that I'm denying the challenges that are in front of Black men. And in no way am I denying the challenges, but I recognize the truth. I'm responsible for my joy. Not the media, not anything outside of me. I'm responsible for my joy, and I can tap into that joy when I choose to.
Come on.
And so my teacher, Wayne Dyer, taught me something that really resonated with me. He says, never focus your attention on that which you are against. Always focus your attention and take a stand for what you are for. So I take a stand for Black male empowerment versus taking a stand against racism. But I'm accomplishing the goal. Even though people that are taking a stand against racism, what they're wanting to do is to not have racism, to create unity. But when you're focused on racism, you're going to create more racism. So for me, as a man who happens to be Black, I simply focus my attention on what I'm for, and I'm for Black male empowerment. And that's why I launched the Shatter the Stereotypes movement, to showcase and highlight Black men so that we have an opportunity to see ourselves and be exposed to a positive narrative that you seldom see in mainstream media. So that's why I do what I do. So as we wind down, first of all, I want to give you an opportunity to let people know where they can find you. If they're interested in learning more about you and your work and what you do, how can they find you?
Oh, wow. And I'm assuming we can put this in the, what they call it, the show notes or links or what have you.
Yep.
But yeah, there's, I guess, 4 places. One is my personal website, www.nasirbayan.com. The second is my private practice website. My private practice is called True Peace Counseling and Wellness. So www.truepeacecounseling.com. And then for my corporate mental health work, it's thementalwellnesstoolkit.com. And then LinkedIn. If a person just searches LinkedIn, then I'll come up. So those are probably the 3 main ways.
Gotcha. And there will be links below the video so people can access you. So now I want you to take a moment, and based on our conversation today, I want you to leave the audience with some final wisdom. Whatever you feel inspired, whatever you feel inspired to share with the audience.
Oh, this I think could be applicable for anyone, but I'll say specifically for Black men. Know that you are loved. Know that you are worthy of peace and of joy and of fulfillment, and that it's possible. Like, know that it is possible, and tap in. Whether it's with a therapist, whether it's doing inner work. There's a saying that when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. It's so good, I want to say it twice. When the student is ready, the teacher will appear. So sometimes when stuff comes up, it could be anxiety, depression, fear, relationship issues. When stuff is coming up, it's not coming up because we're bad and wrong and all these sorts of things. It's actually coming up because now it's finally ready to be kind of seen and felt and healed, and you can tap back into your innate joy. So those are my, I guess, kind of final words or thoughts.
Well, my brother, I just want to say thank you for who you are and for the amazing work that you're doing. And again, I don't believe in accidents. Everything happens for a reason, and we've been brought together by divine appointment to work together to help Black men heal.
Come on.
And that to me that's why I do this show. That's why I just listen and trust the universe to guide me to the right people. And so when we were on the call the other day, I said, man, I just something I like about that guy. I like about that guy. But I'm glad we've connected, and we got a lot of work to do.
Come on, let's get it.
But we got this.
Let's get it. Come on. You're right. Come on.
We got this. So for those of you who are watching, my closing thoughts are simple. Trauma is real, and it is your responsibility to heal whatever trauma you may have. And know that on the other side of healing, there is a joy that's available to you. But you got to be willing to do the work. This isn't necessarily easy, but it's worth it. It is absolutely worth it, because ultimately I think the goal is I think it was Socrates who said, "To thine own self be true." And that's what we need to do. We have to commit to our own self, to our true selves. And the only way to do that is to heal. So, as mentioned, there are lots of resources out there. You just have to find the one that works for you. But make a commitment to yourself that you're going to do that. And my closing thought for you is this: if you don't go within, you will always go without. Go within, heal your heart. You can have anything your heart desires. We'll see you next episode. Take care.